Welcome back, everybody, to Hoops HD. This is
Woohoo!
our weekly Hoops HD report,
Beast
reporting
Week.
here the
Beast
evening
Week.
of Monday, November 21st, a few days away from Thanksgiving holiday.
Yeah.
I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined up top here by David Dorman and David Griggs. Down below me, coming from Arizona and recently from Las Vegas, John Titel. To his sides, John Salika and Joby Fortson. We've got a lot to get to here, a lot of good games over the past weekend, and this is one of the busiest weeks. Griggs probably is the busiest week until championship week of the entire season, is it not?
It pretty much is, and it's sort of the week, metaphorically speaking, that the cue ball breaks the balls apart, and the season really starts to take somewhat of a shape. We've had some big games, and we up until this week, but this is sort of the week that you get all kinds of unique matchups in all kinds of unique settings and venues, and it's my favorite week of the season, uh, behind maybe championship week, but by far my favorite week of the regular season. It's just incredible. I've got a bunch of games on now between teams that almost never play each other.
Yeah, and this is only about a 10-day week as opposed to championship week is a
Yeah.
14-day week. So this
Yeah.
is otherwise it'd probably be equal if it went the full 14. But
Yeah.
uh, we do have a lot to get to here. What I'm going to do is go ahead and pull up the standings right here and kind of get into things. And give me half a second. We should be seeing some Big Ten standings and results popping up on the screen any second now. Uh, and
How
there's a
about
lot to.
Maryland? Look at that.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Griggs, you
good
want to start
win.
with start with the Terps who coming off of a little bit of a championship trophy here, correct?
Yeah, and when you sort of begin the way that we did, I just recall us doing the preseason podcast. I don't think any of us were really big on Maryland. We skipped over them rather quickly. When we were counting who we thought would get in, most of us probably weren't picking them. A really impressive week. And first of all, how about that win starting things off against Binghamton? Holy cow!
Griggs, I'll tell you my problem with Maryland is I get it. They're 5-0. They just won an event. Uh, okay, they got two blowout wins this weekend over a St. Louis team that the jury's still out on, and a Miami team that the jury's still out on.
Miami was an Elite Eight team last year, and they got everybody back. I think they're
Including the
good.
top transfer in the country.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think Miami, I'll be surprised if they're not in the field come March. I'll
Yeah.
be surprised.
Well,
Okay.
I just went from thinking Maryland was just a blah team that was just going to be in the also ran group that might get close to the middle if they had a good year, to beating St. Louis, who, yeah, the jury's still out, but I was higher on them than I was on Maryland, at least until the weekend, and Maryland blew them out. And then they blew out what I personally think is a really good Miami team. So I've been impressed / surprised by them, perhaps more surprised.
Beyond this Maryland team, Stalika, you had a chance to see Indiana because you were at the Xavier game, correct? And how about the Hoosiers up number 11 in the nation?
Well, Indiana wasn't exactly tested in their first two games, but yeah, once their feet got put to the fire right here, it was evident to see early on why they had only won 3 games on the road last year. They did fall behind by 9 at Xavier, but when you have someone like Trace Jackson Davis in your back pocket, he was getting a lot of points in the paint. I think he ended up with 30 in the game, and they hit just enough shots and managed to hold off a late Xavier rally. So it's a big win for the Hoosiers. And from what I heard, it was actually their first road win against a non-Big Ten team in about 10 years. So they'll definitely
Wow.
that's pretty much an indictment of their past couple coaches.
Yes. Yeah.
However, this team does look to be a year older and a year wiser after a first 4 and then run to the round of 64 last year.
Yeah,
And
that would
skip the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Indiana is the one who skips it a lot, so they don't get that every other road game against a solid ACC opponent. So
they think it's grossly unfair that they have to play on the road every other year.
That Indiana win that was part of the Big Ten destroying the Big East 6-2 in the Gavitt games. Domination of that series this year. Dorman, got to also talk about what Michigan State did this week. Wins over both Kentucky and, well, they beat Villanova. I don't know how good Villanova is. The jury's still very much out on that one, but definitely the win over Kentucky.
The Kentucky win was impressive. I thought this Michigan State team was going to struggle, especially out of the gate with this crazy loaded schedule. For what it means, the outside boat game against Gonzaga, they hung really tough against one of the best teams in the country. And then they came back and stayed with Kentucky in double overtime and pulled through in the end. And I was one of the ones that said Michigan State wasn't that good. I'm quickly changing my mind. Michigan State is tough. They are playing defense like better than they have in the last couple of years. There seems like there's more intensity coming up. And I really like the big guys down low. Michigan State impressive so far.
Michigan State impressive, Indiana impressive, Maryland impressive.
Northwestern impressive.
Titel, you had a chance to see Illinois. I know they went 1-1, but hell, they beat UCLA.
Hell, they did. They were down 15 points in the second half to the Bruins and somehow came all the way back. Very impressive win. And then no shame in losing to Virginia by single digits. As to how they should feel about having the 32-9 free throw attempted disadvantage. Not sure if they can blame the refs or the fact that it was a more physical game than they were expecting or something else, but certainly didn't help. And great team, great start. Terrence Shannon, 8 of 9 from behind the arc on Friday, tied his school record. Didn't show up so much against the Hoos on Sunday. He was only 1 for 5 from behind the arc. And I thought this was going to be their toughest stretch of the year in terms of UCLA and Virginia back to back. And then if you look at the first week of December, they're at Maryland and then Texas. They get at a neutral site at the Garden. So their schedule is only going to get better and better.
Yeah, this is, and you know what? We've already talked about a whole bunch of teams, Joey. There's still more teams I think we got to talk about in this conference. Starting maybe even with Penn State. Beat a very good Furman team right in there with Tech, and then beat Colorado State.
Yeah, no, Penn State, you give Penn State credit. This is, we're talking about Maryland as the afterthought. Penn State was, we go, well, maybe someone in our group said Maryland might make it, and then they were dismissed. No, there wasn't a soul talking about Penn State. I mean,
Yeah. I believe they were my dark horse team to like maybe be on the NIT cusp, but
and I laughed at you because
I got laughed at.
They're lined. They were lined up.
Panel was right to laugh at you.
Yeah. No, but Penn State, yes, I think the Virginia Tech loss actually is as impressive as you point out as anything. I'm not sold on, except for San Diego State, I'm not sold on the Mountain West. So, good win. You controlled the game. You beat them solid. You beat an NIT team, and you beat them like you should. Penn State, though, that being said, has done an outstanding job setting themselves up for, hey, if they go 500, if they finish things out, lose one more game out of conference, beat the teams they're supposed to, and they go 500 or a game over 500, 2 games over 500 in the Big Ten, that's right on the edge of a berth. And we didn't think that was even possible. That's a lot easier said than done, though, as Chad points out, because the Big Ten is much more loaded than we expected. All you have to do is look at the J&G ratings, which are pretty much up to date of what the resume you've done against undefeated teams. Look at that. Every team is in 115 or higher, and all but 3 are in the top 70, which is very much at large bid consideration worthy.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even still talked about Iowa. Picked up a very nice road win at Seton Hall. My Rutgers team did lose a game to Temple, although missing both Mulcahy and McConnell for the game, their 2 best players. So we put an asterisk by that one. But Titel, I want to go back to you to discuss one other team here, because I know what a big Arizona State fan you are. And maybe the one team that's not looking good in the Big Ten is the Michigan Wolverines.
They're not. I mean, 4-1, I don't know that we can write them off or anything, but certainly losing by 15 neutral site to the Sun Devils, it's not going to help the cause. Another team with a very difficult schedule ahead. They host Virginia next Tuesday, and then they travel to London to face Kentucky. So good luck with all that. Juwan Howard's going to be happy with his son Jet shooting over 40% from behind the arc. And Hunter Dickinson, the big man, looks like he is a strong contender for All-American, if not Player of the Year so far with his play. But yeah, The rest of the schedule has been a little light so far. When you beat an ACC team by 31, even though it's Pitt, like that's a great win. But they definitely
No,
need
it's
to-
not.
But
It
you
is
need
not.
OT to beat Ohio U last night too.
And Eastern Michigan, they've played 2 MAC schools and both took them to overtime. I mean, that's just telling is getting blasted by Arizona State.
I'm just
But we
saying, don't
knew
write them off. They're
Eastern
4-1.
Michigan was going to be so good thanks to, one player.
They started slow last year and turned it on.
They did. They did. Yes.
There is Griggs, there's a lot ahead this week. This only gets us up to Saturday here. There's so many games coming up. I'll scroll down a little bit, get a few more of those games on the screen here. But
Yeah.
I
We
mean,
Mini at Northwestern, or I'm sorry, Mini at Vatech might be big, but most of the big ones, Ohio State, San Diego State going on right now.
Shield your eyes if you're watching that one.
Right. Yeah. It's, I mean, you can tell San Diego State is playing. I don't know. Purdue and West Virginia, what's the
Michigan
circumstances
State
of
and Alabama, and
Purdue,
that,
that's a big
Gonzaga.
Yeah. West
That's-
Virginia
that's on
off
the
to a
offense.
fairly decent start. Of course, like when you're playing Gonzaga, Iowa, Clemson. I don't know.
there's a
Most of
flip-
these tournaments are
these
Yeah.
tournaments are so good this week here that we're not even going to go over every single one of these games because there's just
Right,
so
yeah.
many good ones ahead.
Yeah.
We'll talk about them next week when we review them. But let's jump over to the other half of that Gavitt game, where we saw the Big East only be able to pick up 2 wins. Slika, you being the Big East guy here, is this trouble for the Big East? The way they really just have a lot of red on the screen for this early in the season.
It's going to be trouble, at least in terms of trying to get protected seeds right here. Creighton is at least so far carrying the banner as far as starting off the Maui Invitational with a win against Texas Tech. Of course, they're going to be tested more considerably tomorrow when they go up against Arkansas and potentially against Arizona down the road. Villanova, they also had the stumble at Michigan State after getting down big in that one. Otherwise, you're looking at, well, if Seton Hall was a hope, well, that went down the tubes. UConn, they're still 5-0. We'll see how they do in the Phil Knight Invitational half, which they could end up bumping into Villanova depending on how things shake up there.
Yeah, one of the things that's kind of noticeable is the lack of wins that aren't home by games. You looked at the Big Ten. We just went through a slew of notable wins. The Big East, Nova beat somebody, LaSalle.
No,
okay,
the big ones.
they beat
The
LaSalle.
big ones still lead. Yeah, the big ones still lead.
Delaware State.
Yeah,
They
Was-
barely beat,
was-
give UConn credit. They won by 35 over Delaware State, which is a lot better than what Villanova did.
Yeah.
But like,
but that's a
Stalika
problem.
said,
Sorry, go ahead, Dorman.
the big one will be Creighton is going to get Arkansas tomorrow, and they're finally, have a big time team on the schedule. So we'll see how the Big East fares with that one. Creighton kind of holding the Big East banner right now. That is huge for them. They could really use a huge win against Arkansas tomorrow, which should be a fantastic game.
Yeah, and at least Creighton has beaten somebody. Texas Tech
Yes.
is a likely tournament team. I mean, most of
Yes.
these teams have not beaten anybody.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like Titel, when I look at this conference, I'm just looking for anybody that's done anything. If you look in the rankings, you've only got 2 ranked teams. And Creighton has done something. UConn has just won games they should have won. They haven't done anything against anybody of note yet.
Are we not all stunned to see the winning record next to that team called Georgetown? I mean, how does that not
Big
lead
win
the
over
show?
LaSalle yesterday. How about that?
We have to go to Jamaica to get it, but we'll take it.
They don't have a winning record in this country, but
Oh God.
Joby, here's the upcoming schedule in the Big East, and I mean the big things I think really are to circle both what Creighton does in the Maui and what UConn does in the Phil Knight.
And see if Villanova can actually get their schedule back. Because if they can upset or win, Iowa State and have a chance against North Carolina, let's see if what they can do against UNC. If they all of a sudden pop off, you never know with UNC's lack of depth. UNC should run them out of the building, but maybe not. Who knows?
One quick Marquette, as we record this, is down 6 late in the first half against Mississippi State.
Yeah.
So again
It's expected though.
We'll get to
yeah,
Mississippi
John.
State
That
here a
thing
little
is-
better, but yeah, like Marquette's playing a team with a pulse and they're losing.
St.
Likewise
John's
on
also has
Thursday.
an St.
Yes.
John's has an important one tonight against Temple in Brooklyn. If they see if they can stay undefeated.
Yeah.
I would highly suggest Xavier beat Florida on Thursday, so at least you're assured of one quality opponent. You'll more than
You're
likely
right.
get Duke, maybe Gonzaga. You don't want to end up playing Oregon State and Portland State because that would not be good.
Let's jump over to the Big 12 and Titel.
Oh, right, yes.
I want to start with this Baylor team. You had a chance to see them in that game against Virginia also, which really shocked me how well Virginia played actually. But then they did come back and put UCLA at 0-2, which I know you were very happy about.
Yeah, I don't know how nervous Joby was, but Baylor was leading at halftime, and then it was just a tale of two halves, and Virginia went on a 30-5 run. And to be honest, like I still can't believe it because we're talking about a Baylor program. They're not just good. This is a perennial top 25 team. They win 25 games every year. They're like top seeds, and they got outscored 30-5 in the first 10 minutes of the second half. The good news is they did rebound on Sunday. They beat UCLA. It was only by 5 points, but still a win. And there's a lot of good backcourts around the country. I'm going to put LJ Cryer and Adam Flagler up against any of them. These guys are combining to average 36 points, 9 assists a game. They're making almost half their threes, 35 of 77, and they're perfect from the free throw line, 18 of 18. And we just had the big non-conference games, a huge test December 2nd. They had to Sioux Falls to play a little team you might have heard of called Gonzaga.
That's a great game.
I think
And
speaking of,
Titel,
okay, go ahead.
Titel, I think you may have missed the best backcourt member in your list on Baylor. That's how good Baylor is. I think George is amazing. I think that kid's a lottery pick. I mean, he's just insane. When he fouled out, that was the final end of the great comeback that Baylor had done in that game.
And actually, Joe, I want to stick with you because he mentioned Gonzaga, and when we're talking Big 12, we got to talk about what Texas did to the Zags.
Well, Texas, we knew that Texas was going to be at least a Sweet 16, Elite 8 type level team. That's what I think most of us discussed. Well, Texas caught, I still would say Gonzaga, if they play, 10 times, I still think Gonzaga wins more than Texas in such a scenario. But Texas proves that maybe Elite 8 is not their ceiling. Maybe Final Four is. And so, this is a balanced Texas team. That's what you gotta love. Shaka has had time to get his system in place. And, it wasn't like they luck boxed their way. We'll get to Virginia in a second, but I feel like Virginia got really hot with some of those threes, and Baylor might have been overall the better team. Not here. This is a case where Texas was the better team that day, no doubt, against Gonzaga, who seemed lost at times.
Yeah, it was was sort of a unique game in the sense that, Texas and Gonzaga is a good showcase. They don't normally play, but it was on campus. It was not during the winter break. The students were there. It was a full arena. It almost felt like when I say it felt like a conference game, I mean the atmosphere of it.
Yes.
Because one of the things is great is Feast Week is you don't get that atmosphere that often anymore. I mean, normally when two ranked teams are playing each other on campus, it's almost always a conference game. So it was kind of fun from that regard.
Yeah.
Especially
They
in the
ran into
spanking
a
new
buzzsaw.
arena for Texas.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. They opened the beautiful building. They packed the place. The students were right on the floor. It was an amazing atmosphere.
It was
Texas,
great.
you think of basketball laid back. There's no noise in the building. The Edwin Center events. But this was amazing. And Gonzaga ran into a buzzsaw. But Gonzaga came back strong the other night against Kentucky. Gonzaga's good. Texas was an unbelievable atmosphere, and Texas was red hot. And Texas is talented. That's a very good team.
Yeah.
However good though, Dorman, that this Texas team is, the other perennial power here, the Big 12, Kansas, got the great win over Duke.
Yeah.
Then they used that proverbial term, played with their food with Southern Utah on Friday night.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to see an upset there for a long
I did
time.
too. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. When you have so many games, you have 30 games, like you just said, Chad, they had just been coming off the Duke win. Everyone's telling them how great they were. Duke had this amazing recruiting class. Kansas beat them down the stretch. You're great. You're great. You can't be up for 32 games a year. They played with their food. They beat them in the end. It is what it is. You'll see that throughout the year. This Kansas team is really good.
Okay, this Kansas City was really good. Griggs, I got to give you 3 seconds here. A team that I don't think is very good at this point. Even though you
Oh, God.
you went crazy about them in our preseason show.
Chad,
How about the Pokes?
We got to move. We got to move on to the next conference. The Pokes have let me down a little bit. They're 3-2, and in 2 of their wins, they really looked really bad.
Yeah,
and
it
they
dominated
looked-
4-point win over DePaul. Yes, I mean
Yeah,
that
and
was-
DePaul. I mean, how about that win over DePaul? Big East team. The Big East had a team in the Final Four last year. So I mean, let's give the Pokes some credit.
Salika, here's the upcoming schedule of the Big 12. Again, I mean, I would just look at these tournaments again here. Is there any other games you really want to highlight here?
I'll highlight Kansas right here just because they're going to be in the battle for Atlantis and probably going to be a favorite. It's going to be a little weird seeing West Virginia and Iowa State carrying the Big 12 banner when it comes to the Phil Knight Invitational and Legacy.
I love that game against either Dayton or Wisconsin that Kansas is going to have on Thanksgiving too. That should be either one of those.
Best
two
out of
should be-
3
yeah.
falls against the Flyers.
Yeah. How about on Thursday? We've got Big Red against Big Red, Oklahoma, Nebraska. I know that's more of a foot. I mean, this isn't a very good basketball game. If the two were playing in football, it wouldn't be very good either.
Let's jump over to the SEC here. Oh no, let's go to the Pac-12 first, actually. Which Titel has a lot of red on it and only one undefeated team. They haven't even played their game yet today either. Your Arizona Wildcats coming up here in another hour or two tonight against Cincinnati, I think it is, in the Maui. But how's that? The only undefeated team left, and we're only a couple weeks into the season.
Yeah, I feel I'm getting too old to stay up to watch the games in Maui, unfortunately, but hopefully you guys can send me a tweet overnight to let me know how my boys did. Yeah, and they're getting it done with offense. Second in the nation in 3-point shooting, first in the nation in 2-point shooting, 73% inside the arc. I mean, it sounds like all they're doing is dunking, which I'm sure they're getting a lot of that from the big men like Balo and stuff and Tubelis. But Rocco's favorite Pelly Larson has been great from behind the arc, 4 of 10. And Kirk Kriisa has got a triple-double the other night. So I didn't think they could get any better after losing not 1, not 2, but 3 guys to the draft last spring. But I'm very impressed. Obviously, if they win Maui, then I think they are a legit national title contender. And then they better refocus because they have the Indiana neutral site game in Vegas in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I'm going to see how Maui will be a very good test for them. We'll see.
Joby, if we were to look at the J&Gs right now, this is a one-bid league.
Look at Cal. Cal, the front runner.
How about Cal
What a
361?
secondary,
It
right?
doesn't even go to 361. I don't think it does.
Cal was on, not, this is the latest. This is today's J&G.
Yeah.
In yesterday's J&G, Cal was 363. That is last. I am in shock how bad Cal is. Of course, Louisville and Florida State, you aren't that far ahead. But yeah, Cal's awful. And look at the losses the teams are losing to. Southern. UC San Diego, not even San Diego. UC San Diego. That's
Yeah, just
the
The conference
What
is
is-
4-4 against the SWAC this year.
What is Mark Fox doing?
I mean, but it's not just, you point out, I mean, every single team except for Arizona, the 2 Arizona schools are not even tier 1 wins on the road. That's awful. I mean, and UCLA, they'll recover. Let's be honest. You lose to Baylor, you lose to Illinois. That is
And they were
not
competitive in both those games. I
You're
mean,
right. I mean,
UCLA's
UCLA
for
will
real.
be fine.
Yeah.
But, it's just early days, at a 3-2 record.
Will
This
USC
conference
will
as a
USC
whole
be
is awful.
will
It's
USC be
it's
fine though?
No.
Will USC
No.
be fine? Will Oregon be fine? I mean, Oregon,
No.
I get
Oregon-
it was Houston last night, but will they be okay?
Well,
No.
in relative to what? I don't know. I don't think USC has it. I was big on them before the year started. They just have not looked good.
And Dorman, I gotta say here, is it then? Are we looking at maybe the 3rd best team suddenly? Is Bobby Hurley's Arizona State team? A week ago, we were ready to fire Bobby
Yeah.
Hurley.
I was stunned by that Michigan game. And to say they won by 15 isn't even, they were up 20-25. It wasn't even close. Michigan scored at the end to make it presentable. I mean, Arizona State ran them off the court. I mean, Michigan wasn't even in the game. Arizona was playing defense. They were hitting shots. Hurley was all over Howard's son. Michigan did nothing good in that game. Arizona State actually looked solid for about 40 minutes there. So we'll see how it goes. Arizona State plays like this. This conference is so bad. Yeah, they could be the third best after Arizona and UCLA.
Here's the upcoming schedule in this conference. I guess I think the one other team we got to look for, I don't even know that I see them quite here on the schedule, that they might have this week off until Sunday at least, is this very schizophrenic Colorado team.
Yeah.
With wins over Texas A&M and Tennessee, but losses to SWAC teams. So
losses to Grambling, losses to who else beat somebody awful beat them down.
Yeah.
But
that's the upcoming schedule there. But let's now jump over to the SEC, where we see this is what a conference should look like this point of year for your power conference, not what we just saw in the Pac-12. Am I correct?
Yeah, and let's start right at the top. Missouri has been amazing. I mean, it's one thing to beat Penn by 7 points. That's a great win. The rest of the schedule, not so good. And they have a couple more cupcakes ahead before they get to host Kansas on December 10th. I forget, is that Kansas-Missouri game famous for anything? Anybody?
Yeah,
it's the border one. I don't know. It's the greatest rivalry ever. I personally think it's overrated. You all talk about it way too much.
But I mean, Joe. Stalika, if we look at the rankings here, though, Arkansas, the highest ranked team now in this conference, does that surprise you, or do you think Arkansas has earned it to this point?
Well, what Arkansas did to Louisville today can only be legal in the state of Hawaii this time of year.
I thought they
then
were
again,
playing Chaminade. Listen, they look like
mean,
Chaminade.
lots of teams. That's going to happen to Louisville a lot this year.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Stalika,
Louisville
sorry.
is doing a good job filling in for the Silver Swords this year.
Oh.
But Arkansas's first major test is going to come tomorrow against Creighton right here. Don't be fooled by Missouri and their 5-0. That's not going to last. Auburn, they're going to have a couple overseas games where they'll probably validate themselves slightly here.
Yeah, Joby, I got to say, though, this Alabama team has also looked pretty good. And they went out on the road to South Alabama, and which I give them credits for scheduling that game and winning.
Yeah, because those sort of games, especially in state, can be really tricky on the road. It's not like they went to Mobile and, it's not a big place. So, yeah, I'm sure there were Crimson Tide fans in the stands.
Not many. Did you? I couldn't believe that.
But South Alabama, this was the biggest ticket in town for them forever. And that's exactly where I was going, Griggs. There weren't a lot of seats for them to grab, because South Alabama got first crack and they used it. And wow. Yeah. But that's great. Alabama tested themselves. They went out and they drilled Jacksonville State and etc. But Alabama is, that once again, they were in that class of Sweet 16. Maybe a good year of being Elite 8. Who knows?
Yeah.
They'll get the opportunities in this conference to prove how good they are.
Right. Both Nate Oates and Bruce Pearl are these are few and far between. Virginia, your coach does it. They're not afraid to go. Bruce Pearl, when he was at Tennessee, they went to Chattanooga, like they went to Memphis. They're going to play games like that. And I don't know. I don't have Auburn's schedule off the top of my head, but they've gone to UAB. And it's nice to see that both Auburn and Alabama willing to play a game like that. That was a fun one.
I'll tell you, we've gotten this far into the conference, and Title, I've not even heard the word Kentucky mentioned yet. They did go 0-2 on the week, but it was Michigan State and Gonzaga.
No shame in losing to either one. I still don't know that playing on an aircraft carrier is good for anybody, but no, I think that Gonzaga showed they were legit. That's the kind of game, like, I think in March, you cannot say that a game in November is going to reflect how they play in March, if they play in March. Gonzaga is just a better team than them in November. The scoring seems fine. The defense needs work, and they get Michigan in a couple weeks in London, so we'll see if their offense travels.
I guess we got to mention here a couple other things here. First of all, Florida with a nice win with a win at Florida State. Florida State absolutely looking awful
Yeah,
so
let's
far
not
this
call
season.
it nice.
But
Florida State played them. Florida State played Florida closer than they played those dregs that they lost to. So I don't know how good a win.
I think
A&M's the one that I'm like sitting here. And I'm
that's
worried
exactly where I
about.
wanted to go, Joby, was this A&M team, especially after what happened last year, and they really got the shaft from the committee. And Buzz Williams came out with that press conference, ripping apart the committees, leaving them out. And here they are losing games that they should have won to Murray State and to Colorado. You don't build a resume that way.
28-point loss to Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean, and then actually the win over Loyola Chicago is actually, pretty good.
Loyola looks pretty lousy so far this season.
I actually think Loyola Chicago is actually solid this year, but neither here nor there. We'll discuss it, when we get to the A10. This is worrisome. I mean, because like you said, like I was mentioning, it's not just the fact they're losing to Colorado and Murray State, it's how they're losing. They're losing, they're not looking good. And this is a team returning players that that everybody of note was projecting in their field and likely wearing white. Unless they turn around fast, Buzz is going to have no argument when the committee leaves him out of the NIT.
Didn't really have one
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Dorman, here's our upcoming schedule. Is it just the events we're looking forward to again here? Or is there anything else you're really circling? We've got a lot of good games on this schedule, obviously.
A lot of good games. Most of them are in these tournaments. Tennessee, Butler. I already mentioned, I can't wait for this Arkansas Creighton tomorrow. You want to watch two teams get up and down the floor. Tune in tomorrow afternoon. It's going to be fantastic. Alabama's getting Michigan State on Thursday out in the film night. Florida Xavier also out there in the film night. Tennessee will get the winner of BYU USC. I still like this Tennessee team. I think the Colorado game was a huge fluke. Tennessee is as good as any of these teams in the SEC. They're in the upper echelon. They will be heard from.
I got it, Griggs. I know I'm not a soccer fan. You know that. I know you are. World Cup on Friday, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock p.m. start is the United States' next game on Fox. And Fox had the nerve to cross schedule at the same time on FS1, Texas A&M at DePaul. I mean, they're killing themselves with their viewership, are they not?
Yeah, they are. Like, I mean, not just in FIFA, very upset about this, that people from around the world are going to be diverted to this Texas A&M DePaul game.
And they can't drink.
Yeah.
Well, I think they can drink at the DePaul game, can't they?
Oh,
Yeah.
they
If you're
you're
going to
right.
watch
They
Texas
drink
A&M
it
and DePaul, you better be allowed to
Yeah.
drink.
Not soccer games. No drinking in soccer.
Stalika.
I do
Ace-
want to weigh in on
Okay.
Florida before
Okay,
we move
okay,
on, though.
All right.
In
Go
their
ahead and weigh in,
game
Florida.
against Florida, I was going to say, in their game against Florida State, they were down by 16 at halftime in that one. They start the second half with a 29-5 run. That may be more an indictment of Florida State than it is for a team like the Gators, who have salvaged their season so far. That was their first win in Tallahassee in 10 years.
All right, let's jump over to the ACC. Joby, you are a Virginia guy, so I'm going to let you start things off here. Obviously, coming off of the tragedy last week, Virginia goes out to Vegas. I know Titel, you were there as well, and wins that probably the best 4-team event that we had this year.
I was going. I said, you give me one win, I'm happy. As a Virginia fan, Virginia was great. They played they look like exactly what a lot of folks in the calculus were. They're returning 90% of their scoring, so more than anybody else in the country, as far as a percent of your scoring return. Along with every 4 years, as many of you know, teams get to do an overseas trip to gel. This was the year Virginia could do that. So now their defense and maybe more importantly, their offense is already gelling at a high level. And so with the 7 core nucleus they return, they then bring in 3 new, very important parts. And, most notably, probably to date, if you watch the Illinois game in particular, Bennett Vanderplas, who, yes, he's named after Coach Bennett's dad. That's, and he was outstanding coming in, rolling, giving Gardner, who had to carry the team last year from the power forward / small forward position. He didn't have to do that this year. Now you have people who can stretch and make shots. This is a team who couldn't make threes last year. And this is the one bit of caution that I will say. All of a sudden, Kihei Clark against Illinois, Armand Franklin against Baylor were nailing threes like they were going out of style. And Beekman in both games was consistent. Last year, all 3 struggled. If this is hey, we got our shot in the offseason, watch out for Virginia to do exactly what they did this weekend throughout the year. If this is a mirage, then Virginia will still be a very solid, good tournament team. But we'd have to hold the horses on Final Four 2019 National Championship. And the fact is, Chad hinted at, the team played inspired. The tragedy that happened last week, which we'll go into later in final thoughts, definitely had a role, and it uplifted because all athletes, all of them know each other. They knew the 3 athletes who passed away. That sort of inspiration, they were far enough, and I guarantee you that I'm not going to give up. And if you saw that Illinois game in particular, where Illinois, tough team, that team is a really valuable team. Virginia took punch after punch after punch and was able to deliver it right back at the Illini. 2 very good teams squaring off. Virginia came out ahead. They got to that extra loose ball. They got to that extra offensive rebound in particular. That inspired play was certainly a very good dedication and memorial to those, at least on the court, to those who passed.
And Titel, Virginia obviously playing great. North Carolina, the #1 team in the nation. Duke has looked really good despite the loss to Kansas. Are we running into the situation that we had kind of last year as well, though, where do you go after those top 3 teams in this conference? Because there's tons of problems already that I'm seeing below those. Things like Virginia Tech losing to Charleston, and Florida State being garbage, and Louisville being utter garbage, and Syracuse losing at home to Colgate. And is there anything beyond these 3 teams in this league?
Sure. I know you want to make these grand conclusions in November, which that's why we're doing this in November. But Virginia Tech beating Penn State on a neutral site, that's got to be a good looking thing on your resume. I know losing at Charleston, although it was on the road and by 2 points doesn't help, but I think that they balance out each other and even weigh more heavily towards the good. They also have plenty of non-conference stuff ahead. Minnesota at home, Dayton at home, Oklahoma State neutral site. They got plenty of chances, and it's not even Thanksgiving yet. So I would say pump the brakes.
All right, pumping the brakes. Okay, so, Dorman, if I go 4 teams now, I throw Vatek in, are we finally hitting the cliff there in this conference?
I think so, but NC State and Notre Dame have some. They're going to pile up some wins. Let's see.
Jury's still out of both of them. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Miami.
Yes.
I have not been impressed with
Providence.
Good God.
Miami.
Providence is garbage, Joby.
Yeah, I'm not high.
Miami's a good team.
I like this.
Miami's good.
I'm with you. Wong is a sensational player, and I have Miami in the top 4 of this conference and a tournament team, no doubt. But I think NC State and Notre Dame are going to be heard from before this is all over.
Okay. I don't think Syracuse will, but
Yes.
and you've got these teams that are going to be so bad at the bottom of the conference. If you look at them right now, we got 3 250+ teams at the bottom of this league in the JNG. That doesn't help the league. That draws it down. That really, you don't get credit for a very good win if you go and win at Louisville this season, if they keep playing this way.
But there's a lot of that tournament / NIT. You only have, and I would include Boston College in that crud. I think as it is, Syracuse isn't 167. They're better than that, but there's a lot in the middle that will give road wins to a Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech will go on the road to a Wake because who's decent in my opinion, and that's a good win.
I agree.
Let's take a quick look at the upcoming schedule here. Where are we up to here? Salika. Again, other than events, I don't know that there's much else to circle here, though we've got a ton of great games in these events this week again.
Yeah, I would be looking at a team like Miami that's already gotten past their event, but St. Francis Brooklyn, nope, that's a bye game. Central Florida, that is going to be interesting though on Sunday because UCF we'll get into later. They've been a bit of a pleasant surprise this year. Not going to be easy for the Canes.
If you look way down here at the bottom, I just scroll down to show it that we're going to see the beginning next Monday of the ACC Big Ten Challenge. That's first few games of that. Let's jump over to the Zags. I know we've spoken about them several times already, but Griggs, let me ask you, the Zags sitting here now at 3-1 with a couple of very nice wins, and they did get blown out of Texas, but I don't think we discussed that already. You can't really take much away from them for that.
Right. Defensively, I think they need to do a little better in terms of being a number 1 seed Final Four caliber team. But other than that, there's I kind of agree with the point Tytel made earlier. Like what they did in Texas is not indicative of where I think they'll be in March or and possibly April if they're still playing there. They're really solid. An easily a protected seed, and
Right.
probably on the 1 or 2 line by the time it's all over.
And I mean, St. Mary's is undefeated. They've beaten some good under the radar level
Yeah, they
programs,
have.
albeit all at home so
Yep.
far. The team though, Dorman, that I'm really starting to really catch my attention is this San Francisco team. They won at Fresno. They beat Northern Iowa today. They are starting to show me a little bit of life.
Absolutely. A lot of people thought after Todd Golden's departure, this program might be on the downswing, but that is not the case. I thought that Northern Iowa game today could have been a little tricky. Not at all. They handled their business, and they're going to get their shots with St. Mary's and Gonzaga. Let's see if this is the year they can finally win one of those games and really put a huge win in the program. But I think they're very good. They're right there with St. Mary's, and I think St. Mary's is a fantastic club.
So we're looking at a solid 3 Big West Coast Conference. If we were looking, if we
Yes.
try to predict it right now, then
I did the bracket on the website today. I had St. Mary's on the 2 line. I think they absolutely deserve it.
Here's the upcoming schedule in this conference. There are, again, I think but a lot of these games are in events. Gonzaga's in one of the Phil Knight events there. So we've got a lot to look forward to here. St. Mary's is going to have Vanderbilt, and where San Francisco is.
at Davidson. That's what
Yeah.
that is
Ooh.
huge for San Francisco.
BYU could help the conference by knocking off USC.
Right. Well, the BYU's in that event. They've also got Butler. That's the battle for Atlantis they're in, actually.
Yep.
I would like to see if Portland can pull off at least one win in the PK Invitational, as they're opposite Gonzaga. Well, not in the same bracket as Gonzaga.
Only if they meet Oregon State.
Let's jump over to the American and Tytel. How impressed are you with how good this Houston team has looked so far this season?
Even more than I thought possible. Rocco was riding this team from day one, and he gets all the credit because you knew they were going to have the defense, but scoring over 80 points in each of their first 4, then going to Eugene and winning by double digits. I mean, somehow more impressive than I even thought. Marcus Sasser comes back from injury. He's playing like an All-American. Jarris Walker, I asked Coach Kelvin Sampson about him during the preseason media day, and he's like, he doesn't even know what the plays are called yet, and we're gonna use him into it. And he's already a solid starter and arguably the second best player on the team. So I think they're gonna run this American, and they might win the conference in mid-February.
They might, especially Griggs, if Tulane, who had got off the nice 3-0 start, but completely laid an egg against Nevada today.
Yeah, in a game that they kind of needed to win. If Tulane is as good as we if we thought that they were going to be, you would expect them to be able to beat Nevada on a neutral floor. And it's the kind of games that you start to need, that you need to win in order to, in a mass, in order to establish yourself. So they may still have some work to do. I still am a big fan of the direction their program's going, but may still have some work to do.
Yeah,
Some of the other teams here.
Yeah, I'm just gonna bring a
Yeah.
couple of people here in. First of all, Dorman, you know, well, actually, Sleek, let me ask you about Cincinnati because they lost to Northern Kentucky on a true road game, but they lost to Northern Kentucky, so that was not good for Cincinnati.
Well, that was kind of a favor they owed NKU just for being able to play in their arena while Fifth Third was being renovated. That being said, Cincinnati looks like they're going to have their hands full. Forget Arizona, but trying to get a win against either Ohio State or they better get at least one against Louisville the way this thing's shaping up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Maui tournament and Dorman. I think the other team that's worth mentioning that's actually surprised me so far is Wichita State. A win at Richmond, a nice win over a pretty good Grand Canyon team today. You know, a little life here for the Shockers. No.
Yes, actually, very nice surprise. I think there's been a few nice surprises. Central Florida's looked
Oh, yeah.
okay. East Carolina's been okay. I think Tulane will get better. I totally agree with Briggs. That's a game they had to have today. But I'm with you, Chad. Wichita State is going to be a force, and you know they're going to be tough at home. I don't care who goes in there. When Houston goes in there, Central Florida goes in there, those are going to be great games. Watch out. That's where Houston could get tripped up a little. Not many times will they get tripped up in this conference, but in Shockerland, possibly.
Yeah, East Carolina lost to Indiana State today. That did
I
not
know,
help
I
them
know,
much.
I
Griggs, I know you were a Temple fan. Nice neutral court win out of over a Rutgers team that was missing its best two players.
Yeah.
Well, home losses to Vanderbilt and Wagner. We done with that discussion.
Yeah, I mean they're putting together a resume that isn't quite as schizophrenic as Colorado, but like you don't
Well, they
know
beat
what they're
they
going
beat
to do.
you
They
beat Villanova and Rutgers.
beat
You lose
Villanova. Yeah.
to.
Memphis remains. I still think that they're a super talented team that doesn't play together well.
Here's the upcoming schedule, and you know, again, talk about the events. I don't know what more we really want. You know, Memphis, we could find out some about them actually with their event. I find a lot. They start with Seton Hall.
There's one
Then
I'd
they-
like to highlight, Chad. I think this one's big. This Miami Central Florida game. We talked about it a little bit. Miami is not in the rankings, but a team that went to the Elite Eight and returned pretty much its core, not getting a lot of respect. And a UCF team that we just talked about has been a little bit impressive already. That's a big one.
Let's jump over to the A10 and Joby, I'm not sure what we want to say about this conference that is definitely looking worse than the Pac-12 that it's probably the worst conference we've seen so far in this show.
I mean, let's say, you know, we had a lot of discussion preseason about St. Louis. I don't want to bury them yet. You know, I mean, the loss was to Maryland, who we praised. You know, so. But yeah, there's a lot to be desired. This conference, you know, we laugh about the Pac-12 being a one bid league. This really is maybe a one bid league, unless. I mean, you can kind of look at the J&G numbers and all that stuff. The highest team is St. Louis at 60. Well, right now, the at-large bid goes through the low 50s. Yeah, so no, they are a one-bid league right now. Could that change if St. Louis goes on a run? But the thing is, once you get in conference, there's not a whole lot to beat. And so, you know, it's just, it builds on itself. The A10 will be handing bids out that now will be taken by, you know, Power Five, like the Big Ten. You know, the Big Ten could be looking at a lot of bids. Well, where are they going to come from? Pac-12 and the Atlantic 10 are going to be giving bids away that we thought they be taken in the preseason.
Well, I mean, is it should we, just because they went to Titel, just because they went to UNLV and lost, should we give up on this Dayton team now, or you know, I mean, they've got a huge chance of the battle for Atlantis this week to bounce back, right?
Correct. I mean, road losses by single digits in November, I don't think are gonna kill anybody. I think that we need to improve the schedule over Lindenwood, but obviously playing Wisconsin on Wednesday is going to do exactly that. They go to Vautech, who apparently some people here don't like, next month. I mean, plenty of opportunities coming ahead.
They need
Yep.
him.
Beat Robert Morris by 9. That doesn't look good in my. That's almost more concerning than the loss for me for Dayton.
Big game coming up here Friday, San Francisco at Davidson. I think we mentioned that one earlier. Other big games here on the schedule, St. Louis at Auburn on Sunday.
That's a big one.
And I know, Griggs, you're going to be tuning in for Stonehill at Fordham tomorrow.
Yeah, Fordham off to an unusually good start for them. 4-1 overall. The fact that Fordham is beating anyone is kind of surprising.
One last conference to get to is the Mountain West, and I want to start here by just explaining what I've understand happened. New Mexico State and New Mexico were supposed to play the first of their 2 games the other night. The game got canceled, and I'm just going to say what I heard in what the story that's been reported so far in the news. And a tragic incident here, another tragedy involving college athletics, is that apparently a few people in New Mexico tried to lure one of the New Mexico State players.
They were students, were they not, Chad?
I believe one was one or two were students, 1 or 2 were not. I believe it was a group of 4 people, from what I understood. At least 1 or 2 of which were students, tried to lure one of the New Mexico State athletes at about 3 a.m. before the game to try to assault him. A gun was pulled against the New Mexico State athlete, one of their better players, and a shot was taken. I believe they actually shot him. Now this New Mexico State athlete then pulled out his own gun, which happened to be carrying, and shot and killed the guy that had shot at him. So this is just another episode of gun violence, unnecessary. I don't know how this happened, why it happened, but this is that game ended up getting canceled. I'm now hearing they're questioning whether they're going to even play the return game in a few weeks. I believe the second week of December. But New Mexico, I guess, is sitting here at 3-0 right now, but including a win at SMU. But beyond that, I mean, this conference has, we've got San Diego State. And I don't really know what else we have, Griggs, in this league beyond San Diego State, because Colorado State not looking that great. Wyoming, Graham Ike is out for 8 weeks, and they've not looked good either.
Not good at all. Did not look good at all today against Boston College. Not a lot. All kidding aside, they're not going to get all the way up to even the NIT, but San Jose State sitting at 4-1 might be one of the better stories, simply because look at everybody else.
Actually, Joby, let me ask you about this Utah State team. Rocco was huge on them preseason. They're sitting there at 14 in the J&G. Are you a believer in them? Because I was not heading into the year.
The reason why, and this is where early on the J&G will give, the win at San Diego is, right, because you get a road win. A lot of people don't, even we talk the wonders of Virginia's run through, as Griggs would point out, they still haven't won on the road yet. So that was a nice win. I'm not sold on Utah State. They're going to have to show me a lot more. 2-point win over San Diego and go ahead and do it for me.
What about Vegas? They did beat Dayton, and they came from behind to do it. And their defense in the second half, while, because Dayton looked really good in the first half and then just kind of went to sleep. Is there a reason to pay attention to UNLV?
Well, I mean, a 10-point win over High Point also is not that bad. I mean, High Point is going to fight for the title in the Big South. So, as far as under radar teams go, don't dismiss it. So, can UNLV do it? I'm willing to listen.
Are we overlooking Nevada though? Off of the win today over Tulane, undefeated. Road win earlier at Texas Arlington.
They beat William Jessup by like a drum.
Is that a team? Is that a school, or is that just some guy they found?
It was 5-on-1, but still.
I don't know. Titel, is there anything you're looking forward to here this week, other than maybe the game that we're watching right now with San Diego and whatever else San Diego State does in the Maui?
I'm hoping that Wyoming can keep the boat afloat. It's obviously it's sinking a little bit at 3-3, but I think the fact it's always nice to see UNLV back and doing great. I remember as a older gentleman, the legendary teams of Tarkanian back in the days. So I don't think they're going to sustain this. And based on the ratings you have up there, they're not going to, but just the fact that they have something to be excited about in Vegas is a nice change of pace.
And they play a whale this week in Life Pacific.
They got Southern Illinois and maybe probably Minnesota before that. But I would note here that Nevada game tomorrow is going to be against Kansas State. Kansas State did hold out to beat Rhode Island since we started this show here. So, and then they'll get possibly Akron on Wednesday at Akron team. That's looked pretty good so far.
Yeah, they were real good.
I guess on that note, though, that concludes going through all the conferences. So I'm going to pull this down here. I'm going to run through each of you for any other final thoughts. And Dorman, let me start with you.
I'm going to go to the Virginia situation, and Joby's going to speak to this much more closely and much better than I could ever. But what Tony Bennett and this entire program and every kid on this team did when, like Joby said, these basketball players are friends with the football players. They room, they dorm, they eat meals together. The sports complex is a tight one. This community was absolutely devastated. Then Coach Bennett had to take these kids away from the morning, away from the campus, bring them to Las Vegas, and they had to focus on a basketball game. Now, these basketball games were against as good as this country has. Illinois is great, is really good. I'm not hyping this because of what happened. Illinois is a real unbelievable. Baylor's great basketball team. These are no flukes. He brought these kids in there with nothing like basketball on their minds. And they went in there. If they lost both games by 20, I would still be applauding Coach Bennett and every kid on the team. Instead, they went in there and they ran those two schools out of the gym. Baylor was gone, and they beat Illinois down the last 5-6 minutes like they knew exactly what to do. I couldn't be more impressed. I couldn't be more sad for the situation at Virginia. But what Coach Bennett and everyone on the staff and every one of the kids did is remarkable. And I couldn't be more impressed with what happened in Virginia this week.
Yeah. Well, Joby, you want to follow up with your thoughts on Virginia also?
I mean, that's really well stated. This did impact. I mean, it impacted me personally. When I woke up, I mean, I and read the news, I was just in absolute utter shock. For those who don't know, this all what adds to the tragic element of it, it's an inner athletic department situation because the assailant was a former walk-on football player. Now, he didn't know. This is what makes it even sicker. He targeted the individuals because they were football players by all accounts, and they never played with him. So it's not like it was a situation where there was some, by all accounts, he really didn't know them, and it was premeditated because he waited until the end of the bus ride, where they went and saw Emmett Till. Think about that. A man who was, a boy who was basically for lack of a better word, assassinated. And then this happens at the end, right next to his getaway car. It's been impactful. The Virginia community has definitely rallied around the basketball team, but I want to give credit to the rest of the country. They deserve credit for the recognition and understanding of what Virginia is going through. The Baylor players who wrote personal letters to Virginia players, that's just outstanding. Illinois with their own tribute of 1-15 and 41. Of the three numbers. This sort of thing, I'm very appreciative of the community in Charlottesville, but I am also appreciative of those outside the community of Charlottesville that are as articulate as Mr. Dorman and have those feelings, because it is welcome and it is appreciated. Thank you very much to all of those out there who have kept Virginia in their thoughts and prayers. It does matter. It does have an effect and is extremely well received and helps in the healing.
Well, obviously I got to echo what both of you said here, but Titel, and I'd hate to call on anybody to follow up on that, but do you have any thoughts to follow up on that or anything else you want to discuss for the night?
No, I'll do my best. I mean,
Okay.
it's hard to argue that anybody had a worse week off the court than Virginia, but obviously they had the best week on the court with neutral site wins over Baylor and Illinois. So Tony's got them going in the right direction on the court. As far as other teams that have a big chance to improve their resume this week, as Virginia did last week. I'm looking to the Great Northwest with the Phil Knight Invitational and the Phil Knight Legacy. So the Ducks, 2 double-digit home losses this month, the UC Irvine, and Houston, I get it. But they can bounce back 3 possible games against UConn, Alabama, North Carolina in their home state. So a good chance for them to get right. And then in the Legacy, I want to see what West Virginia's made of. 4-0 so far. They destroyed my Quakers by 34 last Friday. We're going to see how real and good they are. 3 possible games: Purdue, Gonzaga, and Duke. Oh my. And depending on how things shake out, Stalika, they could face Xavier in the title game, and then their next road game on December 3rd at Xavier, back to back.
Jeez,
Well, it wouldn't quite-
Slika, go ahead. Your final thoughts, Slika.
It would not be quite back to back for the Musketeers were that to surface, because there is a game with Southeast Louisiana in between. But as far
Dangerous
as-
Southeastern Louisiana team. They've
Yeah,
had a couple
true.
nice
One at
wins.
Wyoming.
Now, as far as my own final thought, I actually want to go down to the Palmetto State. I want to talk about a contrast in 2 teams right here. South Carolina, after firing Frank Martin, they go 0-3 down in the Charleston Classic. Angry Frank, you go up north to Myrtle Beach. UMass wins the Myrtle Beach Invitational, including a buzzer beater win against Murray State. And we did get to see some vintage Angry Frank during the game where one of the UMass players makes a mental error right in front of Frank Martin. He immediately gets yanked. And even towards the end of the game where UMass was just trying to run out the clock, he's still yelling at his team because they're not hustling, trying to inbound or trying to get a rebound and just let the ball go out of bounds. We're seeing a bit of a difference in this Minutemen team compared to where they were last year under Matt McCall. So I definitely see UMass going in the right direction, but still not a postseason team quite yet.
Yeah, I was disappointed when they lost the game to Towson, but very impressed with their bounce back since then. Greg, do you want to finish the show off?
Yeah, again, just to kind of talk about or to repeat what we started the show with. I love this week. I love all of the unique venues and the unique matchups, and the Junkanoo Jam, one of my favorites, to where I think the only seats available are folding chairs that they bring out. I wish they would play the Final Four there. But again, it's in addition to being highly entertaining, it actually is highly important too. As crazy as this is, there was a game today, and I know this is more under the radar, but Toledo was playing, and you kind of knew that like this would be a really bad loss. Like, here they are playing in front of 50 people, but what happens in these unique, small, sometimes non-air conditioned, sometimes no seated gyms, in a lot of cases can really impact what the committee does, who they select, and where they get seated. These games are really important, even if they feel more like jamborees sometimes.
Yeah, Toledo lost to Kansas City today by
Yeah.
12 points. That was that. You know what? We will be discussing that and a
Yeah,
lot more things tomorrow night in a day early night for the Under the Radar podcast because of the holiday this week. But on that note, on behalf of David Dorman and David Griggs up here, John Titel below me, John Sleeka and Joby Fortson to his sides, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. If you don't join us tomorrow night for Under the Radar, happy Thanksgiving to you and happy Thanksgiving to all the panelists here. And we'll talk to you again real soon.